The physical world around us is filled with carbon footprints, whether it's a water bottle that we're drinking water out of, whether it's a meal that we're eating, or whether it's the clothing that we're wearing. All these things have carbon footprints behind them. My group is obsessed with finding ways of eliminating that carbon footprint. When I was 5 years old, I first became interested in electricity. I used to go collect batteries, light bulbs, wires, resistors, and I learned to put these together. And in doing that, I empirically learned the rules of how electrons flow through circuits. As I got older, I became interested in how one chemical becomes another chemical. And I thought it was so interesting that there were catalysts that could drive these chemical transformations. And it is with time that I recognized that electricity could actually be used to drive these catalytic events, that you could use electrons moving across an interface to drive the making and breaking of specific chemical bonds, so that we could go from very simple inputs like CO2, nitrogen, and water, and make the physical complexity of the world around us. And that's exactly what my group is working on today, bringing together those two interests, that in electricity with that in chemistry. A century ago, there were growing concerns that there could not be enough fertilizers produced to sustain agricultural production to feed a growing world population. Recognizing this, Haber started to work on developing catalysts that could convert nitrogen into ammonia. He discovered a catalyst and then started to work with Bosch. This brought together a scientist, Haber, with an engineer, Bosch, and they together were able to eventually make a process that could actually make ammonia from nitrogen, water, and fossil fuels. This in turn gave us a way of actually being able to make the ammonia that the world needed. But now a century later, we recognize that there are problems with the Haber-Bosch process, namely that it produces the largest carbon footprint of any chemical that we make today. For this reason, it is really important that we develop new methods of making ammonia. On top of this, it's a process that requires really high temperatures and pressures of 200 to 250 atmospheres, which are enormous. So my group has come up now with a new way of making ammonia at room temperature and ambient pressure using renewable electricity, where the only inputs are nitrogen and water, and that we can now eliminate the hydrocarbon input. That in turn can help to eliminate the CO2 footprint. So we use a lithium mediated process where lithium metal actually breaks the nitrogen triple bond. Those nitrogens can then be associated with protons and electrons so that ammonia can ultimately be made. When you hear about epoxides, you might not realize that they're actually everywhere. Epoxides are one of the most critical chemical intermediates, used to make soaps, surfactants, foams, and plastics. We need to find new ways of making these epoxides because their production has an enormous carbon footprint. We often make these epoxides starting with thermochemical processes. So we use temperature and pressure to react an olefin, which is a double bonded carbon, along with oxygen to be able to make the epoxide. But in doing this, we over-oxidize and we make lots of CO2 in the process. Instead, you can also use what's known as the chlorohydrin process, where you take two double bonded carbons and you introduce hypochlorous acid. But when you do this, you make a stoichiometric calcium chloride side product. That in turn means that you have an environmental discharge, which is really harmful. Recognizing this, new peroxide-based processes have emerged as well, where you can take two double bonded carbons, you can introduce a peroxide, an oxygen atom can move from the peroxide onto the double bonded carbons, and you can make an epoxide as a product. But here, you have challenges with explosiveness. So you're either picking a carbon footprint, an environmental discharge, or a process that has extreme safety hazards. And that's where the process that my group has developed comes in. Imagine you could instead just take water, take an oxygen atom off of it, and put it onto two double bonded carbons. That would be a much more sustainable and safe process. And that's what my group has innovated on, is developing catalysts that can orchestrate that molecular level dance to take that oxygen atom to be able to actually make the epoxide with the double bonded carbons. As I was planning to start my own research group, I remember developing what I called a manifesto. a plan to drive a revolution in the area of science that I was interested in. As we set out in that direction, I recognized early on that we were running in a very different direction than the rest of the community was going in. And this can be deeply uncomfortable, as you're looking for early success and validation to know that you're working on the right problem. My own research group has people all the way from science to engineering. We're a collection of chemists, material scientists, chemical engineers, and mechanical engineers all working together to drive progress on the scientific questions that we've identified. This means that we often have to translate between disciplines. This can be really uncomfortable initially for students and postdocs who are hearing words that they're unfamiliar with. It might be a chemical engineer who's hearing about molecular orbitals for the first time from a chemist, or a chemist hearing about principles of fluid mechanics for the first time from a chemical engineer. But our group learns to translate these concepts to find shared language. And once we do that, we're able to achieve even more together within the walls of our own research lab. So modular chemical manufacturing is going to be essential to overcome the current paradigm in which chemicals are made. Today, we make chemicals in really large, centralized plants that cost billions of dollars to build. These plants then require that these chemicals be distributed to where they are ultimately needed. My group is working on ways of making chemical production more modular, and we're doing that by replacing the temperature and pressure that are used today in chemical manufacturing with electricity instead, which allows for making chemical plants smaller. So imagine, for instance, that you could make ammonia closer to where it's needed, next to a field where it will actually be applied as a fertilizer. You would no longer have to move that ammonia from a large centralized plant in which it's made to the field over a very long distance. So you could actually save cost. You could drive the cost of ammonia production down by 2 to 3-fold in some parts of the world where infrastructure for distributing ammonia is lacking. So much of the progress that we make in science is built on putting our heads down and working hard over periods of weeks, months, and years. And that's why receiving the Infosys Prize in the physical sciences is a true surprise. It's not something that we expected or even thought would happen, but it is such an incredible recognition of the hard work, creativity, and perseverance of our students and postdocs who had a vision and wanted to work together to make that vision come true. The intersection of sustainability and physical sciences has really large, daunting problems. And it's essential that we have new ideas come about, ideas that are going to come about from anyone working on the problem, whether they're an undergraduate researcher, a graduate student, a postdoc, a research scientist, or a new faculty member. Those ideas can come from anywhere. And it's important to feel the conviction behind those ideas, that those ideas can be grown, can become something big, even when others tell you that it's not a good idea to be working on. That's what will drive a transformation at the intersection of sustainability and the physical sciences. There's a coming revolution in using electricity to drive chemical reactions. Imagine if we knew the catalytic surfaces that drive chemical reactions with even more clarity. Those experimental tools are emerging that allow us to know exactly how the surface interacts with molecules as chemical bonds break and form. Imagine if theories could, with even greater fidelity, predict what's happening on the surface. That foundation is being laid right now, where experiments and theory can come together even more closely to drive a revolution in how electricity is used to drive chemical synthesis.